got two people that we're going to have a discussion. These are pretty infamous biohackers. If you haven't heard of David and Keoni, haven't seen all the stuff they do on Facebook, well, you should know about them. They're pretty amazing people. And both of them, no college education or anything, and they're doing some mind-blowing stuff with genetic engineering and synthetic biology. But I think that they can probably talk about themselves a lot better than me. So if you guys want to start by just introducing yourselves and having a conversation.
Hello. So I'm David Ishee. I'm a dog breeder, and I learned how to do genetic engineering so that I can be better at that. That's been basically the last 3 years. And so, like, recently I've been branching out into, like, doing a little tweaking on myself. But that's sort of me.
Hello?
It's not on. Try it.
Hello? Hi, I'm Keoni Gandall. And basically my goals are to make biotechnology more accessible to people, to make biotechnology something that anyone can work with, that anyone can modify and build and create. And over the last year or so, I've been working at the BioBricks Foundation working on this free genes project where we want to create lots of genes, free genes for people. And basically my goal is to make it so that anyone can genetically modify any organism they want without any prior knowledge or without going through a lot of expensive formal training, just making that accessible to everyone.
So I have a question.
Okay.
So you say the BioBricks Foundation, is that associated with iGEM?
The BioBricks Foundation is not associated with iGEM. It was founded by the same folks, some of which are here.
Because I remember your first talk. You sounded a little mad at iGEM.
Well, iGEM does quite a few things right, but they do quite a few things wrong as well. They make it very expensive, and the expense of going to iGEM is only going up, not down. And that really makes it so a lot of the folks in here that are running biohacker labs or want to just biohack themselves can't afford to go to iGEM. You're just really they're throwing that community under the rug.
Yeah, I looked at it once. I was like, I might consider going to iGEM. It was like $5 grand. I was like, okay, no, never mind.
Yeah.
Is that better? Okay.
Cool. And their parts registry is great, but not just iGEM teams should have access to that technology, to those pieces of DNA. Everyone should be able to have access to that, and they don't right now.
Yeah, so you don't want to be in a place where just big institutions and rich people can have all the genes they want to play with?
Yeah, I don't want that. Opposite world.
Yeah. So you've been doing the thing with the free genes thing.
Yes.
How's that been going?
Good.
You got to expand a little more than that.
It's been
got a lot of time to fill.
It's been ramping up. Really getting good at making software, and something I would say to everyone here is try and automate yourself away. Try and make it so that everything can be done by robots. So then, you just set up a robot, and then you can get your friend's protocol. You can get your collaborator's protocol. Everyone's running on the same stuff. Everyone's sharing the same protocols, the same robot code, the same DNA.
Yeah, but I don't have a robot.
Well, someday you will.
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't even be able to fit it in the shed. I'd have to get a twice as big a shed.
It's a small robot. It's like the size of this table.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
That's not too bad.
Yeah.
I could probably squeeze that in.
So, do you want to make genetically engineering mammals accessible to everyone?
Oh yeah. And so that's sort of like all I've been doing. obviously the first people I want to work with is dog breeders. And so dog breeders have been genetically modifying dogs for like 40,000 years, right? They're the longest running genetic engineering experiment we have. And we're using the same tools we were using 40,000 years ago. Like, we started doing this before agriculture, and we haven't really changed much. So obviously there's room for improvement. And because we're using such crap methods, the dogs are suffering for it. And so you got like over 600 different genetic diseases, and some of them are just crazy perfect for CRISPR and things like that. Like the one I always talk about is hyperuricemia in Dalmatians. It's 3 bases upstream of a PAM site is the mutation. It's a single point mutation. It's like, come on. It's begging for Cas9. And so this sort of stuff's accessible, but the problem is it's expensive. Even though it's the cheapest it's ever been, it's expensive and it's tricky, and it's just not in the skill set necessarily of dog breeders. So my whole point is to, like, first of all, show dog breeders they can do it, but then also sort of simplify and simplify and simplify so that they can do it quick and easy.
Could the same technology be used on humans?
So actually, I tried that. So the exact same buffers kill human sperm, but a couple of tweaks, sure. How did you make a human sperm? The old-fashioned way.
So how has it worked in dogs? What's going on recently?
So the last couple of years, I actually had several miscarriages. But it was really early, so it just kind of looked like false pregnancies. So they just sort of get big and then get smaller and make milk and then stop making milk, and there's just never any puppies. But I think that's because I was using the Lux cassette. And so it's 6 genes, it's like several enzymes, it's very biologically active. One of them especially, the one I think is probably the most likely candidate, is really kind of changes the cellular chemistry. But without getting into all that, I think that was the issue, so I swapped it for something simpler, and I'm just going to do GFP. But I've been optimizing my protocol, and so like now it's like 90% of the sperm get modified. So hopefully that's like most of the puppies at the end.
So our puppies here are on their way?
Yeah, so I've got 2 females pregnant right now, so we'll see. We should know in October.
October?
Yeah.
Mid-October, late October?
Both. 2 females.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
where can we find more information about that?
Facebook mostly. I just kind of throw it up wherever. I should probably make a blog or something. I don't know, like you can go to my website, or you just like friend me on Facebook. I'm like a Facebook whore. I just accept everybody.
Cool.
Let's see, we got a pile of emergency rescue questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
What inspires you the most?
Let's see. I don't know. Honestly, it's like other people in the biohacking community, right? So like I see people do just crazy stuff. Like I first got started because I saw a TED talk from somebody talking about how much more accessible it had become, the technology, and and I see people in the community doing stuff like like Sebastian. He's tweaking plants in his apartment, and then other people are doing. There's so much amazing stuff going on. People are getting like results, right? And some of this stuff is really advanced, really hard stuff. And people they're putting in the time, and they're putting in the effort, and they're making it work. And so like that's sort of like what inspires me to keep drilling at it,
Nice.
What about you?
About me, I guess mine is a little bit more abstract, not really personal. What I'm really inspired by is the computer revolution that happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. The generation of computer software going from a model of like, we don't know what we're doing, we're still using vacuum tubes, to the point where we have like Linux, a whole operating system for free that you can install on any laptop.
So where are we? Are we closer to vacuum tubes, or are we closer to Linux? Like in biology.
In biology, we're vacuum tubes right now.
Yeah.
We need to get to Linux, and you have 2 paths right now that aren't mutually exclusive. You have a path where that is driven by, large corporate interests. Pharma is very interested in, synthetic biology because they need to make the new drug. And we have another path where it could be more of a grassroots effort by individuals who are very interested and have local problems, solving those local problems in their local communities.
Like a bunch of crazy people who wear red shirts all the time.
That too. But hopefully, well, right now we're still on one path, mainly of just, large corporations, large pharma getting tons of funding to do synthetic biology in their own biofoundries at, right next to MIT that aren't really sharing a lot of the stuff that they do. What I want to see happen is more of a grassroots movement where individuals are empowered to be able to make a change in their local environments or communities, just like people were able to make a change during the original software revolution.
See, that's where I think dog breeders can help. So like right now, one of the biggest problems that biohackers run into is like nobody has any money, nobody has any funding, nobody has any equipment, nobody has any reagents. Everybody's struggling to like barely make it, right? Either you have a job and you spend nights and weekends and you go to work to pay for your like Hindi 3 that you're going to use until you run out, and then you got to work, save up. And so, you can either do that, or you can like go to the like various hacker spaces and stuff, and you can try to like do like a Kickstarter or something. So there's all this struggle to like get funding because there's not a great application for like biohacking that leads to money. And most of the biohackers are like open source and stuff like that, so there's like no money. But the dog breeders have like a multi-billion-dollar industry, and they desperately need this expertise. They desperately need not only the tools, but also the people who understand it. Because like I think I can easily make a kit that allows dog breeders with relatively little advancement on, because dog breeders do artificial insemination all the time. But to give them the ability to do sperm-mediated gene transfer, it's a couple extra steps, right? It's like fancy artificial insemination. And so if I can give them that, then they have these tools, they have the ability to make the edits, but they don't have the understanding to design them. And so there's this whole other level of like genetic design that I'm not expecting dog breeders to get into. And so I think the biohackers and the dog breeders could together sort of work cooperatively. So if you're a dog breeder and you have, your bulldogs have this like hip dysplasia or whatever it is that most bulldogs have, and you want to fix that. So you could go to somebody in the biohacking community who's like a struggling post-grad or something who has no money, and they're like, and they have the expertise to do the genetic design, and you have the ability to just dump the DNA in there. And so working together, the dog breeder can generate funds by selling their dogs and then using that to pay the biohacker and so on. So I think those two communities together can complement each other really well. And I think it can help dog breeders have access to the knowledge, and I think it can help biohackers have access to funds to do things with. So I think that together, if it's done right, could generate a little bit of something.
Cool. Looks like we have a question.
Yeah, okay. So I totally agree with that, and I was going to ask a question because I know, like Keoni was saying, grassroots is going to be the next step for synthetic biology, and of course dog breeding is super important and super important to you. But I remember that the benefits would outweigh the costs, but the ethical struggle, how do you think that's going to be resolved because it's so tricky, and then how do you think it's going to be applied and resolved on a massive scale like that?
Yeah, so that's always the big thing. Everybody, the ethics is always tricky when you're talking about mammals, especially. You want to modify yeast or bacteria. Okay, you kill half the yeast, hope nobody cares. But when you're talking about dogs, they've got feelings, they can feel pain, they can suffer, we love them. And so it's different, but I think for every dog breeder there's a challenge in at least the dog breeders that give a shit, there's a challenge in caring about producing healthy animals and then producing animals that are like working towards better and better in terms of health and athleticism, performance, and whatever it is you're breeding for. But the big thing is like there's always a probability that you'll get a dog who's got a problem. Even with the healthiest lines and the most health testing and everything, there's always some probability. I had a buddy who had a dog that was born with like one eye and no mouth.
Oh my gosh.
And so it was like a cyclops. And it didn't survive because it can't breathe, right?
Yeah.
It was just deformed. And so those things do happen. And so if the edits that you're making, especially like the first time, something experimental, cost lives or cost suffering, then you have to be willing to pay that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other side of it has to be something important. And so the problem that I see is some people will use this for like fashion, right?
Yeah.
And so they'll come up and they're like, I want to make the pinkest bulldog, you know?
Yeah.
And honestly, that would probably do amazing. People would buy the hell out of pink bulldogs, right? But the problem is, you know, you want, like, if your end goal is to address a genetic disease, especially with something like Dalmatians, because basically all purebred Dalmatians, and people get ticky about what I mean by purebred, but basically all purebred Dalmatians have hyperuricemia. And a lot of populations are like that. There are dog breeds that the whole population is completely full of sick individuals. And so if your goal is to cure something like that, that otherwise is basically uncurable, and I understand they could just crossbreed. They could. And I've been arguing that for 10 years. All my dogs are crossbred. If they would, it would fix a lot of things, but even like hybrid vigor just pushes it below the surface. So to really fix it on a population-wide level, you need to do more than just fix one individual and then breed them, because again, you're tanking their genetic diversity. So you need a way for lots of dog breeders to simultaneously fix all of it. And it's the only thing that I see.
All right, David, if you were going to breed it, what would be the dog that you would want to breed?
Well, honestly, the dogs that I have now are really good.
No, like what skills would it have? Would it be able to fly? Like, yeah, what's the dog you want in your head?
Okay, so like, let's say it's 30 years from now, we have just perfect control. Okay, so if you've ever seen The Hobbit, there's these wargs, right? And they ride them. There's this one white one that's gorgeous. I would love to just like ride him to work. So that would be a good start.
Are you an orc?
If needs be. But yeah, I mean, so I think not only does it give breeders the ability to do more than they have, but it also gives you the ability to fix things that are broken. And so I think there will be a cost, but I think if it's used right, it'll work out in the ethics.
So Keoni, what goal are you working towards, man? Like, if David has the warg, what do you have? What's your animal to fight his?
I want to build a cell from scratch.
A cell? They'll get destroyed by the warg.
Right? Warg's way bigger, dude. Lots of cells.
You need to bring something else to the fight, man. Really? So?
I mean, pneumonia's pretty good.
Ooh, that was a nice one.
But yeah, I want to be able to take genes from an organism, put them together with it in less than a week for less than $1,000 and get a full synthetic cell. And then we can start imagining worlds in which you're not, it's much less personal than dogs, I'll admit, but to me it's still really cool. You can build life from scratch, from the very essence, and build it up and design it exactly how you want it. You can create life forms that have never been seen before, never even imagined.
Like wargs.
Those have been imagined.
Okay, I'll give you that, okay.
Could it be like T2000 or something? T1000?
But pink wargs, nobody's imagined that yet.
Oh.
All right, so what is this organism that would come from these cells? Like, what do you see?
I mean, I'm more interested in the journey of being able to help people to build those synthetic cells, and then from that point, let people go free. Build whatever life you want from scratch.
But won't that cause a zombie apocalypse?
No.
It will. What about the cell? You said pneumonia. Are you going to turn the wargs into zombies? Orc zombies?
Hopefully not.
We got a question.
So, do you think we'll ever be to the point of where we can build multicellular organisms from scratch? And if so, do you think about that much at all? Like, have you been thinking only on the single cell scale, or have you been thinking a little bit larger than that?
I mean, like, I think it would be really cool, like, to have a Zergling, you know, to have,
Now,
to,
yeah,
you
let's
know,
not do that.
if you could have,
I
like,
played that game. I know how this goes.
the
Not
Zoo-
really into
don't do
Pokemon.
well.
Not really.
Okay, Pokemon then. I mean, it is completely realistic to believe that someday we'll be able to build multicellular organisms from scratch.
Yeah. Pet
Yeah.
dragons, though.
Pet dragons.
I could do that.
I mean, eventually we'll get there. Right now I'm focusing on the first steps, but it's going to be so cool when we can make a Pokemon from scratch.
How far are we away?
100 years?
No,
Wow.
50 years?
Yeah.
30 years. 30 years.
Depends how the exponential goes.
Sure, but if,
What part of the curve are we on?
yeah, okay, 30 years. I'm sure we're on 30 years. If you start with multicellular organisms, right?
I mean, if you look at the 70s or 80s and saw where they thought we were going, I mean, there's no flying cars.
There are flying cars. They're just only for rich people.
Fair enough.
So is the cell from scratch project, was that like your idea? And if so, is it based off of like a step towards something? Like, is that from like a childhood place of like your dreams of building organisms from scratch, or is that like just like curiosity?
I think I'll address the later question and then the first one. When I was in 9th grade, I decided, well, back up even more. When I was in 7th grade, I decided I wanted to make a minimal plasmid, the least number of base pairs in a single DNA plasmid. And I figured out that was really easy. And then I said, okay, I want to do that with a virus. And it turned out viruses already make themselves pretty minimal. Or you can find minimized ones. And so then in 9th grade, I said, the next step.
Keoni,
build
if
a
you were a
cell.
virus, which one would you be?
MS2, it's my favorite virus by far.
I didn't expect that fast of an answer.
3,500 base pairs of ssDNA into E. coli messenger RNA, 4 genes. It is the most amazing virus there is. I mean, I highly recommend looking up this virus on Wikipedia, MS2. All of its regulation is an RNA secondary structure, and it's just this crazy molecular machine. It produces 40,000 more of itself from a single cell. It's really cool.
You inspired me.
It's my favorite virus.
We could tell.
It's very inspiring. So you guys don't have like zero background in biology or went to university or anything. How did you guys like self-start? What kind of, groups or sources did you get? Like, how did you start to just do genetic engineering out of the blue?
For me, it was like I saw a TED Talk, and it seemed like they were sort of implying that it's a lot easier now. And so I was like, so I started just like Googling stuff. And like there's actually a shocking amount of stuff on YouTube. And then it's like open wetware, and there's like every company that sells a kit to do a thing has protocols online for how to do the thing. And then like if there's some weird thing that I don't know how to do, I just sort of like aggravate him. And then I'm like, hey, what should I do here? And he's like, oh, do this. That everybody knows how to do that. And I'm like, oh, I never heard of that. Okay, great. And then it's like other people in the community, and like you hit up people on Facebook, and there's all sorts of weird, groups and stuff. So it's sort of like learn from the community, and then just like pull stuff offline, and then just try it a million times and fail a whole bunch, and then finally you figure out, oh, this is the thing I should have been doing.
I got a virology textbook in 6th grade from a church book fair, and I decided viruses were super cool. And so I was really into viruses.
You're going to destroy the world, aren't you?
Only bacterial ones. And so then in 7th grade, I was like bringing in printed out GenBank files of like phage lambda to class. And my teacher was like, hey, you seem pretty into bio. Here's a bacterial transformation kit. Do it. And I was like, okay. And so then I just kind of did it.
So the FBI has been watching you since about 7th grade.
Hopefully. Exactly.
You guys are looking at me. What you got?
I don't know. We hit a random stopping point.
How
so
would you
we're
like to
hoping
be
this is-
remembered?
Oh gosh. I don't know. As somebody that did something meaningful. You know, I mean, that's sort of a weird thing I hit at work, because like you go to work, and you go home, and you go to work, and you go home, and you go to work, and you go home, and you go to work, and you go home, and one day you die, and then that's it. That's what you did. And I work in the oil industry, so it would be like my whole life product was I made some oil come out of the ground. It's like nobody cares. It doesn't matter at all. If I'd never lived, it wouldn't do anything. And so it's like, I'd rather do something that helps something that lasts, and nothing lasts like life. So, you know, if I can help all the dogs in the world be healthier, even a little, then that lasts as long as dogs, right? So that's how I'd rather be remembered, as someone that helped dogs be better.
I think we had a question. Oh.
Hey, David. Hey, Keoni. I remember last year, David, when you were talking, you did a talk with Hank Greeley and kind of got into it about what the legislation was that was coming down that could prevent you from doing what you wanted to do. And so my question is, what kind of legislation has changed in this last year, and how does that affect what it is that you want to do? There's been several changes.
Yeah. So in, was that 2018 or 2017? I think it was 2017. So as far as like the FDA and stuff is going, they haven't really changed their policy, but there's some interesting sort of almost threats to take away their authority to handle animals and shift that to the USDA, which I think would be a lot better, because the USDA handles pretty much everything else with agricultural animals. So if they did that, I think that would help, because while you would still have to sort of prove that it was okay for weird transgenic things, like if you wanted to make a pink bulldog, but if you wanted to just make a dog not mutated anymore, and so he doesn't have his weird genetic disease, I think the USDA, because of the way they've done plants and stuff with CRISPR, would be like, yeah, that's just breeding. And that's what I'd love for them to see. So if they do that, then that would be really helpful. And then the other thing is, like, there's also talk of the FDA just sort of shifting to sort of more of the USDA's stance, because honestly it's more science-backed and not just sort of, we're going to be really cautious and just grab everything and then just hope that nothing weird happens. But as far as like the real rules, nothing has really changed. There's just sort of talk and rumor that things might change soon, and I think that they will. I'm like optimistic, which is dangerous when you're dealing with the government.
I just wanted to comment out there that I think Megan Palmer is out there in the crowd, who knows a lot about, right over there. She's the person to talk to, because she does lots of bioethics stuff like that.
Hi, I had a question for Keoni. I like the idea of like building the artificial cell and such, but I was wondering about like what type of grassroots movements do you think could be solved by being able to like provide this for different groups of people? So like specific examples.
The technology that I'm talking about here is one that enables building a cell as a goal, but how we get there is by making it really easy to make a lot of DNA, verify it, and make standards for that piece of DNA. Through doing that, you get a standardization of biology. You also get automated construction, so the costs of that go down a whole lot. And then finally, by making those two go down, the cost of monetary amount of money to synthesize that gene and the cost of figuring out how to design it, you lower those two variables. Then you make all bioengineering easier for everyone. Imagine if dog breeders could get that piece of DNA that they needed for $10 instead of 1,000. Imagine if any small breeding community, like even you could think of more animals, or you could think of breweries, or you could think of people producing bread or local products, yogurt. all of those different communities now at their fingertips have the ability to use genetic engineering to do whatever they need to do. And so even though building a cell is the goal down the line, what we have to do to achieve that goal is what's going to make the world a better place.
So it's like the moonshot that makes like Tang.
Yes.
Okay.
I had a question again. So obviously the thing is that you have in common is that you didn't go to school for this, and we've talked about how many commercial applications there are and how you think it's going to explode. So how useful do you think going to school for synthetic bio actually is anymore, considering how fast it's growing and, like Keoni said, where we are on the exponential curve?
Since you work for a university, I'd love to hear your opinions on this.
Oh boy. And since the professor I work under, Drew, is here as well, makes it extra interesting. I mean, I'll take it from the same, it's going to be computer science in probably a decade or so. It's going to be how you perform, what you've actually done is determines, you know, what job you get or how useful how useful you are, how you are perceived. It's not there right now because bio's really hard, and you can't really do it until you get into grad school. So if you don't have access to the technology, since a lot of people still don't, you're still trying to develop that, going to school can be really useful to learn about that type of technology. But if you do have all the access and you're really passionate about it, I think there are ways to perhaps get around strict schooling.
I sure hope so.
What do you think about that, Dave?
Well, I mean, for me, like, I don't know what it's like on the other side, right? So I never went to school. Like, I haven't been to school since 5th grade. So it's like, I don't know what they teach in the universities other than, like, the lectures that I've watched, because, like, some of them are available on the internet. And so I have found that there's just about everything you ever wanted to know on Google. Right, so it's like you go like Google Scholar, and then you use Sci-Hub to bypass the paywalls, and you can see all the papers ever written. You can see like there's edX, and there's all these YouTube places, and there's a million places that give you that. And I guess the only thing you don't have is you don't have any hands-on. But if you build your own lab, then you can sort of do your own hands-on. And maybe it's slower, maybe it's faster. I don't know. I'm glad to see that there's some route other than get a student loan and be in debt for 30 years or just like randomly have $100,000. And so it's nice to see there'd be more than one way. And like we're in the information age, so that's kind of the point. But like I don't know that there will be a point to university structure in a while. You know, maybe they like keep doing research or something, but I don't know. I think we're about to get to the point where it's not worth the money.
Quick question, really deep. If you were to offer a graduate school position right now to MIT, would you say yes or no?
See, I don't know what that means, though.
Like a position in a PhD program right now, they offered it to you, you know, full ride, you get paid $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 a year, and you're going to get a PhD in 5 or 6 years from MIT. Would you say yes or no right now?
I would probably.
I would say no because I like the Bay Area.
Yeah, would I have to move? It's like MIT, so I got to move to Boston, right? $35,000.
Or Stanford. We'll say or Stanford.
Okay, well, I'd starve to death with $30,000 in Boston. I get kids. I don't know. Like, if they could like keep my quality of life the same, maybe. I mean, it would be a lot of fun. If I could bring my dogs, that's going to be the kicker. If I could bring my dogs, I would do it.
I'd probably finish what I'm doing right now and maybe go for it after. And also, if anyone has more questions, we want this to be like interactive, so
We got one right
feel
here.
free to shout out.
Hi. So I have a technical question. David, you use CRISPR, right, to do the breeding?
Not yet.
Oh, not yet. So because there is a recent article who, I think it was 1 or 2 months ago, who claimed that CRISPR is not as precise and the perfect system that we imagine it would be.
So what I'm doing is actually way less precise than CRISPR. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just integrating the GFP gene,
Yeah.
just sort of like to prove the process, because the protocol's never been done with dogs before. It's supposed to be like pigs and cows and stuff. But I'm using REMI, so I'm using using restriction enzyme mediated integration.
Okay.
So it's random integration. So it's way less precise than CRISPR. But most of the animals who've been produced by just randomly integrating plasmids into their genome have been fine. So honestly, like CRISPR's like 5% off plasmid, or you know, off target effects or whatever, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's okay, maybe. But I also have a version of Cas9 that's been mutated to be high fidelity. So when I do the Dalmatian thing, the CRISPR or the Cas9 that I'll be using is like the mutation rate, or the off-target mutation rate, is less than random chance.
So you are following the dog for a long time and see.
Yes.
Okay.
So I mean, like, the FDA won't let me move these dogs off my property, so they'll be here forever.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, we have any more questions? Your last chance. Get your questions in.
Hey guys.
Hey.
What's up?
Hello.
So I got a two-part question. So one, if you had the ability to do human genetic engineering, how would you go about doing that? And then the second part of that, what are the problems and possibilities of human genetic engineering?
You know that one, or you me?
I would say, if I had to do human genetic engineering, well, the first thing I'd do would probably get the ODIN's new kit to genetically modify frogs to test it out there first, and then move that same system over to myself. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable with genetically modifying my kids quite yet. I don't want to hurt them. However, in the future, I think that we'll be able to remove most diseases that are genetic from the human line, and I think that's going to be fantastic. Healthy people are good people.
So a little more interesting. Almost everybody gets behind the idea of like repairing genetic diseases in embryos and stuff like that. What are your thoughts on like going beyond just bringing them back to healthy and doing things that enhance their abilities?
Controversial opinion, but I am...
But let's say it's been proven, like this thing, you're going to do it, and it's proven to enhance their whatever.
I'm fine with it. I think that in advancing the human ability, advancing humanity is something that is good and will eventually benefit everyone. If you look at the early days of a lot of medicines, they start out super expensive. Only the rich can get them. But then after a while, the price gets lower and lower and lower and lower and lower.
Unless it starts going up again at the end, but okay.
Well, technology gets better, and there'll be grassroots movements of people. What I hope to see is that, let's say there is an improvement to the human condition. I hope that to be eventually in everyone.
Right.
And taking steps right now to make that future available.
So you think it'd be okay to make superhumans as long as everybody can be superhuman and not just super rich people?
Yes.
Okay, I'm with you on that one.
All right, last question.
So as someone working in the BioBricks Foundation, correct?
Yeah.
So as someone on the inside, and I know you're interested in lowering the cost of entry for synthetic biology, how are you hoping to, from within the organization, help to make DIY biology and synthetic biology cheaper?
Free genes?
Free genes. We have a project going called the Free Genes Project, where people can submit genes that they need, and we will synthesize them for free. So that's a pretty low cost. And further than that, the software that we're building to be able to do that, and the robots that we're managing to be able to do that, we're open sourcing all of it. Anyone can create a foundry to make thousands of genes. And once you lower that cost, and sometimes centralize it, but anyone can do it, you lower the cost of actually building genes. And so we're building software in an organization that will be able to lower the cost for you to build DNA. I don't know if that is a satisfactory answer.
Like what kind of economic or specific financial hurdles have you faced in trying to drive down or lower the costs of the free in your free genes project? I don't know a lot about it, so
We can talk later. But the main challenges that we faced are technical ones. It turns out, how do you manage all of this data flowing through? How do you sequence verify 2,000 genes? It's like hard. How do you manage all of those robots? How do you manage 3 robots running at once on the same plates, on the same pieces of DNA? Figuring all of that out has been a challenge for the last year, but we're beginning to solve it. And it turns out that probably once we finish this piece of software, we can give it to you, and then you don't have to figure out those problems.
So the economic hurdles are closely tied with the technical hurdles.
Yes.
Thank you.
And a nice hefty grant.
And a nice hefty grant.
All right. Let's thank Keoni and David. They were awesome.
Thank you.